Hey, fourth grade, are you ready to go back in time? So it's spring week 9, and we're going to do our first back in time version of the expedition project. So you're going to need the paper that you started, well, 2 weeks ago, the one that has the 4 people on it, because this time you're working on 1770, the Revolutionary War era. All right. Your 4th grade expedition information. The guiding question: how can I impact change in my school, community, and the world? Your connection from art to your expedition is we're going to connect our personal lives to history and imagine how we would look in different periods of time. Your learning targets: I can look for easy to draw shapes to begin to draw a human, and I can draw a human body with correct proportions. We are still very much in the ideate and then prototype and test area. We've defined what we're doing, and actually we'll define more today now that I think about it. And we'll come out, you'll get to brainstorm and look at some ideas, but you're going to end up testing it by drawing. So, oops, we're going to be going back to the farthest part of history for this immediate area, or for this project, and we're going to be looking at Revolutionary War. I'm going to show you pictures of people and how they dressed, but this is kind of the cool thing. So we don't have any photographs at that time. There were cameras, but they weren't really readily available, and it was mostly just to take pictures of places. So we're going to be looking at the oldest of our time periods. We're going to be going back to the Revolutionary War, and we're going to be looking at some examples of the fashion that people wore, what kind of different social classes, things like that. Now, I'm hoping that you can stick with drawing yourself how you would look if you lived in America at that time. That's part of this imagination exercise, is you trying to figure out how you would be. I'm going to show you lots of different examples. You get to pick which one you want to do. You can be inspired by any of these. I just want to see what you would like to come up with. So this is kind of an interesting thing to me. I really like art and I really like history. So when I get to combine the two and show you art history over the years, it's pretty exciting for me. So let's look at our first example. So we don't have photographs of actual people from this time. We have drawings, we have paintings, but cameras didn't exist, so we don't have any actual photographs of people. So the pictures that I can immediately show you are drawings of fashion back then. This was a very traditional and a rather upper class way for men and women to draw, to wear, to dress. You can see that men traditionally have a hat near them. Women also kept their heads and their hair hair covered in general. Men have on these almost like a two-piece suit. He's got his coat, but he's also got this waistcoat on, and then everybody's got on like some kind of tall boots. You'll notice, even though this guy doesn't have boots on, he still has these long stockings that go up to it. Women wore very long skirts. There were no short skirts then. It was long all the way to the ground. Even sleeves were long. So this is kind of a middle class or even a upper class kind of look or fashion. But let's talk about the really rich. Over here on this side, you've got the really rich. The really rich showed it by using lots and lots of fabric with lots of patterns, and they were very brightly colored. So think about it for a moment. If you see a guy driving a bright yellow Ferrari down the road, you're probably going to look at that and go, wow, I'll bet he's got a lot of money. Well, they didn't have cars back then. So one of the best ways to show off that you were really rich was how you dressed. So having clothes that were bright colors, or in the case of some of the women that used up a lot of fabric, was a way of saying, I'm rich and I can afford all of this. So if you want to draw yourself being very rich, this is the kind of thing you might need to think about. And the bright colors goes for both men and women. You can see that the young man there is also in like a bright red outfit. Now, these guys over here on the side are more like military officers. You can still see that they've got fairly bright colors on their clothes, but this is more like a military well-to-do. So if you're interested in drawing yourself as a soldier, this is something that you might be thinking about. Now, we do have paintings of people at this time. And there was some difference in your place of origin. You can see here we've got some of the women who've got wraps around their shoulders, but you can see that even the men in the back are still wearing very much the same kinds of clothes. And then here's another this is a very rich family. You can tell they're rich because they had a painting done of them. This is a painting that an artist saw. He saw this scene and he wanted to capture it by painting it. This is from a family that went ahead and specifically hired somebody. And you can tell, and look, again, bright, bold colors. Women have a lot of fabric to it. Even the guys wearing some bright, kind of yellowish orange color to it. Now, we have these things called recreators. These are people who recreate these costumes. This is up at Colonial Williamsburg. So the pictures of people that I have, the actual photographs, these are people who are alive today and have made these on their own. Well, not on their own necessarily, but they're part of historical reenactments. Now, what I like about this picture right here is we have pretty much all three. We have what you could consider the lower class, middle class, and an upper class way of dressing. For the lower class, you can see she's got just a kind of a dark shirt, a dark one color shirt, I keep saying shirt, but I mean dress. She's got one apron over her, she's got brown underneath it, so that's probably not even a dyed color. She's just got a simple hat over her head, and she's got like the most fancy thing she has is this around her neck. This is what you would say is probably a middle class. She's not very rich, but she's not, you know, she's got some money to spend. She's got a bright pink skirt on. She's got a pattern fabric over there, but she's got a nice hat. And then we have Miss Moneybags over here. You can tell she's rich. Her dress is like twice the size of everybody else's, even though she herself is not. She's got all of this expensive looking hats and all of these frills and lacy things coming off of it. And it looks like her dress is kind of made out of like shiny fabric, which would imply that it's gold. So you've got three really good examples of how you can draw yourself, if you're a woman, in each one of these in a different time, in a different class. Now, this would be a normal farmer. If you want to go ahead and you want to draw, and you want to say that you had a farm, look at that, easy. You got pants, you got a shirt, you're probably going to wear a hat so you can keep the sun off your head, and you got boots. Not too bad. I do really want you guys to pay attention to the background here and here. You're not going to see modern things in it. Really, that glass and that window, that's probably the most modern stuff you'll see. Most of the time, you would be outdoors if you lived in this time. Now, here's more reenactors, of course. You can tell that these are, again, kind of the lower or the working class. She's got her simple dress. She's got an apron. She's got, you know, just a skirt, shoes. He's probably more like well, he's not a farmer, you can tell that because he's wearing his waistcoat. He's got his long coat, and got nice shoes instead of boots like this guy here. And then we've got a young lady who is probably, again, in the middle class. She's got patterns on some of her fabric. Ooh. But again, as you notice, everyone's got something covering their head. Now, let's talk about the Revolutionary War itself. There's a really big difference between the British soldiers and the American soldiers. Can you spot the difference here? And no, it's not that they brought women into battle. That's just a coincidence that she's in the picture. British soldiers actually had uniforms. American soldiers, for the most part, did not. American soldiers pretty much just walked off their farm and into the army. They weren't really assigned anything besides maybe their weapons and ammunition, but they weren't given uniforms. The British soldiers, on the other hand, had uniforms. And if you want to draw yourself as a British soldier, go for it. I mean, if you think you would have been a royalist back then, that's up to you. You can also draw yourself as an American soldier or just one of the colonial soldiers. Oops, sorry. I do want to point out that even though I am giving you guys the okay to draw the weapons, remember, we're not showing you using them. You're not pointing the gun at another soldier on the field. You're not shooting another soldier on the field. You can show yourself with them, but we're not going to actually show us using them. So let's take a look, too, at some of these weapons. I'll bet you've noticed something about them. Those guns are about as tall as the men who are using them. Weapons then were not terribly accurate, and it was not easy to use. So if you're going to be drawing yourself as a soldier, you need to make sure that you're also drawing an accurate weapon. You can see here two young men. I would say that this is probably a very well-to-do young man. Again, he's wearing bright colors. And then you might have maybe a middle-class young man. But I'd also like to point out that women were on the battlefield as well. Now, they were less likely to be actually shooting, but more playing nurse, which might be one of the reasons why she has on red and white. But if you look at her hands, she's been shooting that gun, so hey, maybe. Did it again, sorry. I'd also like to point out that I've had some really clever young women write stories about themselves pretending to be boy soldiers so that they can be in the war, and like they'll make little notes that say, "This is me. I pretended I was a boy so I could join the Revolutionary War." I'm fine with that. That's up to you, ladies. So, nurses were on the battlefields. They might be harder to recognize from other people, from just about anybody on there, because they too didn't have uniforms. So let's look at my example. This is what I drew of me back then. I figured that I would probably still be a teacher. So as a teacher, probably wouldn't be the most high or middle class. So I just drew myself with one dress. I got the apron in front. Unlike we've seen some of the other women, they had kind of a nice scarf or something around their neck. There's a hat on. Now, this is something interesting. Do you guys, or have you covered who actually popularized glasses? Because it was Benjamin Franklin. Before then, I probably wouldn't have my glasses. I probably wouldn't be able to see very well if I was alive in the 1770s. Everything that's farther away than farther than my hand away would be pretty blurry. So in this picture, I did draw myself without my glasses. So for this week, you guys are going to be brainstorming and coming up with how you think you would look in the 1770s or the Revolutionary War. All these pictures are going to be on your Google Slides in your Google Classroom, so you can look back through it. You can figure out what you want to use for your inspiration, and I look forward to seeing these.